Okay, so we're going to start the next talk. It's Michael Varley on ransomware designs. Michael has been chasing cyber criminals for over a decade and is going to go through some real-life ransomware incidents.
Thank you very much. I'm guessing everyone can hear me. I'm a bit paranoid about this mic, yeah? Fantastic, lovely. Okie doke, so good morning everybody. My name's Mike. I'm a digital forensics and incident response analyst for Triskel Labs. My job is to help organizations respond to and recover from various cyber incidents, including data breaches, website compromises, business email compromise, and of course, ransomware. I am wearing a hat today because my hair is an absolute state. Otherwise, everything else is pretty on brand. We like our black. So outlined a rough agenda for today. Sorry, I do tend to walk about a little bit, but there's a camera watching me. Hi, Mum, I'm on the TV. So yeah, a rough agenda for today. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, a little bit about my journey in cybersecurity, in case there's any students here that maybe wonder what life looks like after university. We're going to talk about initial access. We're going to look at some exfiltration and the artifacts that are left behind, how threat actors get in and encrypt networks without being caught. We're going to hopefully lift the lid on what ransom negotiation looks like if you find yourself in the very unlucky position of having to do so. And if we have time, because I am known for talking and talking and talking, we will do some questions. So a little bit about me, a little about Triskel Labs. We've got some housekeeping to get over and why I've picked these particular tactics to talk about. Oh, it's me with a haircut. That's what I look like when I'm not wearing a hat. So I've been in cybersecurity for almost 11 years, and that makes me feel exceedingly old to say that out loud. I finished Napier in 2014. My degree was in computer systems and networking, and towards the end of my time in Napier, I still had no idea what it was I wanted to do. The only thing I was absolutely certain about is that it absolutely was not computer networking. So I ended up with a Dharma way back when we were still ECS, and spent a number of years on site with the Lloyds Banking Group at their Security Operations Centre here in Edinburgh. Very nervous talking about this because I did this at Security with James sitting there and James is back. No, it was a really interesting experience. Coming from academia, I think academia, a lot of the stuff we do in academia is, best case scenario, this is what we do, the standards that we follow, and business is very risk orientated. It's very rarely an ideal scenario, and a lot of the times it's a case of, does that work? Yep, sweet, let's go. Was a founding member of a Dharma's SOC, also based here in Edinburgh. A lot of cybersecurity here in Edinburgh. I ran my own team of 24/7 analysts, and then after a couple of years moved on to onboarding. I brought organizations into the managed service. I architected their SIEM, acquired their log sources, detection use cases, playbooks, and then transitioned them live. It also included a 3-month stint as like the international SecOps manager for an international organization, which was kind of cool, kind of scary, but thankfully it was just holiday cover and nothing was really happening. So I get to tell people that's what I did, but in reality I did very little. After that, I built a Dharma's managed threat function, or at least version 1.0, which included threat intelligence, threat hunting, and incident support. And for the past couple of years, I've been in digital forensics and incident response. A little bit about Triskel Labs. Don't panic if you've never heard of us before. That's because we are primarily an Australian organisation. Our blue team, 90% of our blue team, our red team and our compliance functions are split across Melbourne and Perth in Australia. But our digital forensics capability utilises the follow the sun model. Doesn't matter where or when an incident breaks out, there is always somebody there to deal with it and put the fires out. Our digital forensics colleagues, we have them across New Zealand, Australia, Canada, United States, and of course here in the UK. We are currently hiring for a new DFIR analyst, so if anyone knows of an experienced DFIR analyst that is looking for a new challenge, you can find me on LinkedIn. And on to housekeeping. I know I'm maybe rattling through these slides at a bit of a pace, but I really ran out of time at Security and I'd really rather not repeat that. So all screenshots in today's deck are from real investigations. With that in mind, I have had to obfuscate some bits and pieces so that we don't accidentally out customers. As you probably saw from the title slide, we do have some memes every now and then, and so this is obviously not intended to be customer facing. Please don't ransomware your friends, your family, your co-workers. I can guarantee they will not be impressed. I'm trying to make sure that there is some value for both red team and blue team here. Red teamers, you'll get an idea of what actually works out in the environment or out in the real world, so you can better emulate it when you're on engagement. Blue team, pretty much the same thing, but from the opposite perspective, recognize it when it's happening and hopefully stop it. And finally, my jokes are absolutely dreadful. So pity laughter is not required, but it is actively encouraged, please. Before we get into initial access, why have I picked these particular TTPs? Ransomware is really cool to investigate, but it does get a little bit repetitive. There are only so many ways you can move laterally through an environment. You've got RDP, SSH, SMB. There's only so many ways that you can acquire credentials, Mimikatz, Lasagne, dumping like LSAS memory, extracting system hives. The same can be said for initial access, exfiltration, impacts, but these are typically the three where we find some really interesting artifacts that are left behind. And I'm hoping that you guys also find them interesting, because otherwise this is going to be really disappointing. Cool, so let's talk initial access. Predominantly, initial access to these organizations is through public-facing infrastructure. If anyone's familiar with Shodan, you will know exactly what it is that I mean. One of the things that is both a benefit and a drawback of Shodan is Shodan will tell you version numbers of software that's installed on public-facing infrastructure. It is very easy to work out what that may or may not have been patched against. Remote desktop terminals, again, if you've used Shodan, you've probably seen them. The administrator account on remote desktop gateways or terminals does not have an account lockout. You'll probably have seen it yourself. You've entered your passwords 2 or 3 times incorrectly and you've been locked out for 5, 10, 15 minutes. The local administrator account on these servers does not have a lockout, and so they are incredibly vulnerable to brute force and password spraying attacks. SSL VPNs, an awful lot of them do not have multi-factor authentication. And of course, the exploitation of critical vulnerabilities, proxy shells, eternal blue. There's been a couple of them over the past couple of years. Now that I'm on the spot, I can't actually think of what they are. Is there another bullet point after this? No, there's not. But yeah, it genuinely feels like over the past 3-4 years that whenever there is a critical vulnerability, chances are it's probably Exchange, it's maybe terminal services. Maybe not so much FortiGate these days, but FortiGate have been going through a nasty couple of years. It seems to be Avanti these days. Before them, it was Cisco. It's all like they take rotating turns. Who's going to have the next critical vulnerability? Oh, that's where the arrows went. Cool. Okay, so one of the more interesting incidents we dealt with involved Mitel Voice over IP Services, VoIP. In March 2022, a CVS S9.8, basically, oh my God, the world is melting level of vulnerability, was released for Mitel VoIP servers. In April 2002, just a month after, a mysterious web shell appeared on this VoIP server. And then in March 2023, nearly 8 months later, all hell broke loose. The Lorenz Group ransomed the environment. What they did at the time is the vulnerability was disclosed. They had an automated scanner to deposit these web shells, and they either sold that as initial access or they went through the ones that they had. And March 2023 was this organization's turn. Interestingly, the managed service provider they had at the time to do security saw the activity. They had alerts, and they closed it as no evidence of compromise, which is it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. I think one of the alerts that we saw was that the threat actor used Task Manager to dump LSAS memory and then tried to pull the system registry hive to get the decoding keys. MSP is like, nah, that's fine. That's routine system activity. We're all good. Was not great. And here actually is the web shell. Here is what the web shell actually looked like. I think it was disguised as a Twitter icon, but we can see there that it was the actual web shell itself was created sometime in 2021. It was dropped on the box in 2022, and then it was accessed by the threat actor in 2023. Man, I am really not doing good with this staying in one place, and This is annoying. I had all these like little arrows like over the bullet points, and it's just not having it today. Oh, yeah, this is what I spent my week doing. We had a very, very quiet week. FortiOS has had a number of high-profile vulnerabilities over the past years. One of the most recent vulnerabilities allows unauthenticated privileged access to the actual firewall itself. The firewall, and as a result, threat actors can, and they did, download the actual config of the firewall itself. But you'd like to think that something that is that important would be encoded or encrypted, right? Right? Turns out, to decode an encoded, encrypted FortiGate config, all you need to do is use the key Mary had a little. And that is publicly available information. And as a result, there we go. And as a result, the threat actor was able to gain various credentials. That bottom one there is the managed IT service provider's account. The Vega and the guest account had access to the SSL VPN through group membership. And so using the password there, the threat actor was then able to VPN into the environment, was assigned an internal VPN IP address, and was able to let loose from there. Weak credentials continue to be a problem. It has been a problem that plagues IT since IT was started to be a thing. But what's interesting though is a lot of these weak passwords also meet default complexity requirements. Like the password complexity requirements in Active Directory are not fantastic. It is a case of minimum length, special characters, numbers, upper and lower case, and like history, and that's about it. I think that we as like an industry, we as practitioners need to start encouraging more robust controls, encouraging people to use password managers. Remember one complex password to get into everything else, and just generally like new approaches to passwords. In general, length is harder to crack, so why not use song lyrics? My current AD password is a line from a Bring Me Horizon track. I'm a massive Wheel of Time fan. In the past, I've used The Wheel Turns and Ages Come and Pass. And here we have actual from ntds.dit from various engagements. I will hold my hand up. I'll hold my hands up. I am not a red teamer. Like, this is not my forte. But if I can do this, the people that do this for a living, no problems. This one on the bottom actually just like bakes my noodle constantly, let me in. But technically, it meets complexity requirements, and therefore, in the mind of the user, that is a strong password. Oh, cool, so let's talk a little bit about exfiltration. I'm doing okay time-wise, I think. I have until, yeah, okay, we're doing okay. Again, said this in security, got to the last 5 minutes, and I was like, cool, here's 20 slides we need to run through. So how do attackers bag the loot? Let's have a talk about data exfiltration. So the purpose of data exfiltration at its most basic is the unauthorized transfer of data from an organization to an external party. It's primarily used as leverage alongside encryption to solicit a ransom payment or extortion from the victim organization. This data is very commonly leaked on dark web leak sites. It also gets sold in the dark web or data markets. And you might think, oh yeah, cool, right, so my driver's license has been leaked. What can a threat actor do with that? And on its own, in isolation, probably not a huge amount. But like we're looking at like the cyber attacks in the UK retail market at the moment, Co-op, Harrods, M&S. There is a very good chance that a lot of data has been exfiltrated from these organizations and can get, when you have a combination of different things that are fine on their own in isolation, passport plus leaked emails for contact details, billing records for names, addresses, that kind of thing, that then very quickly becomes very easy to commit identity fraud. They can steal my details all they want. My credit score is absolutely junk, so good luck. And as a result, organizations can face very, very severe consequences for this. The law, like GDPR, is actually very, very strict. If the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office, feels that you did not make enough of an effort to protect this, to protect customer data, you can be in a lot of trouble, and the fines can be absolutely massive. And here are probably the three most common tools we see threat actors using to exfiltrate data from an environment. Arclone probably more so than most. Megasync is quite popular. I don't know if anyone remembers the whole saga with like Kim.com way back when they tried to make Mega like a bulletproof cloud hosting provider. Spoilers, it's not. These days, the support team at Mega are actually very, very receptive to takedown requests, and they get action relatively quickly. I spent so much time getting those arrows to move. It's so annoying. So how do we detect data exfiltration? Usually when we go into an engagement, we assume that it has happened. We just need to find it. 99% of the time, it has happened. We do just need to find it. So probably the first place we look at is to review what's left of the firewall logs. A lot of organizations don't have any kind of like logging set up for their firewall, and it is essentially, we have the capacity of the memory. A large organization with several hundred users, that memory is going to cycle every day or two. And so there is a very, very good chance that we might look at the firewall logs. There might not actually be anything there. Next place we look is we'll ask the ISP. ISPs will provide data flow logs. As it's usually on business plans, sometimes this is very much a case of have you subscribed to the right tier for the right level of service to get you the right data that you want. Other times folk are relatively receptive and are just like, cool, well, you clearly, this is not a normal request, so we'll just help you out and give this to you. Very much depends on who you get on any given day. Other places we can look is the system resource utilization or SRUM logs. This will give us a list, or this will tell us like what kind of resources are being used by applications and over Ethernet interfaces or Wi-Fi interfaces. The reason for the asterisk is that this is an optional logging component and is not always turned on. And finally, is we can look at things like, we can use tools like Velociraptor to hunt an environment for known file names, file hashes, and process executions. And we have a couple of screenshots there. The very, very top screenshot is what the sort of like bandwidth utilization for an organization looks like on a standard Monday to Friday. A couple of peaks during business hours. It's not really anything to write home about. The one in the middle is when a threat actor was caught exfiltrating data. Very easy to determine because the graph has suddenly gone absolutely nuts. And one of my favorite memes. That's it. Like, threat actors will take just about anything they can. Doesn't matter if it's useful, it doesn't matter if it's not, it doesn't matter if it's valuable. If it is on a server that they're on, they're probably going to take it from you. Sorry, I keep walking forward. God, this is going to be a great video when I show the folk who at work, and I'll be like, oh, you talked nonsense for 40 minutes and just didn't stop moving. Anyway, there are probably fewer things in this world that are more frustrating than slow internet. Does my box in? Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me. But I find slow internet to be absolutely frustrating. And complaints of slow internet within an organization will result in IT teams investigating. So how do you exfiltrate terabytes of data without tipping off the victim? Easy. You run a speed test, and then you restrict your outbound traffic. Actual screenshot from investigation. We found it in the browser history of a file server. The threat actor's gone to ooklaspeedtest.net. Those are the actual values for the upload and download for that server. And then they've amended the rclone.conf to restrict bandwidth utilization during business hours between, I think it's like 7 and 11. Yeah, there we go, 7 and 11. And then it just runs full throttle all night. And it means that the threat actor can start exfiltrating and just exfiltrate constantly throughout the duration of the engagement without tipping off the customer, without anyone going, God, the internet's really slow today, this is doing my nut in. And the IT guy goes, oh my God, what's happening? But Australian organisation, so it'll probably be an Australian accent. I would attempt it, but I do like going down there every now and then. I don't want to upset the entire continent. Premium tools, what is better than the free version of FileZilla? Trick question, it is the pro version of FileZilla, and it is even better when the victim pays for it themselves. Your browser is not a password manager, right? Despite how much Google Chrome really wants to remember your login details and your bank details, it is not a password manager. It is not a password manager. It is not for storing critical details. It is exceedingly easy to extract these from your browser. And think about it, what else do you store in your browser? Personally, folk do bank details. I'm trying to deliberately pick on things that I don't store in my browser, because hypocrite. But yeah, people store bank details, they store credentials, they store systems, and they store services. This is, yes?
Less so on something out of the control of the victim, but also cookies can be manipulated and stolen.
Yes. You should, I say you should watch my security talk, because it talks about how cookies can be manipulated to maintain access to M365 environments. But the audio was actually really dire until about halfway through. But that was. I see folk from security here. I'm fairly sure you actually helped me do my talk. My bad. Sorry. And now think about in a business environment. You've probably got bookmarks that bookmark various systems and services. If you're storing credentials in your browser, you have then just given the threat actor access to those systems and services. Oops, too far. Cool. This is I struggle with it, speaker notes and speaker view. But yeah, actual web logs from the device itself. The threat actor found PayPal details stored in the victim's browser. They've then used those PayPal details to buy FileZilla Pro to then steal all of their data. The victim, did they get it back? I can't remember if it was covered by insurance or not. But yeah, it sucks to be them. But yeah, peak efficiency from the threat actor. Peak efficiency. Speaking of credentials, it is not just users and admins that leave credentials lying around. Threat actors will very commonly attempt to clean the environment post-intrusion. It happens to us a lot. We see evidence of data staging in archive files. We then jump in via CrowdStrike and they're not there anymore. We find evidence of rclone. We know that there should be log files and config files. We jump in and they're not there anymore. Sometimes threat actors forget. And now we have access to their SFTP servers and their cloud storage accounts. Here we go. That is the rclone.conf file left behind during an 8-base engagement. That's it. Threat actors are people as well. We make mistakes. We often think of threat actors as these big, faceless, scary organizations, these scary people, probably a Russian that's built like a brick house. But they are people as well. They make mistakes. So we found the rclone.conf credentials. They are encoded. Again, it is relatively trivial to reverse them. Do you take a peek, actually, before we get... This is going to get a little bit philosophical in a second. You find these credentials, do you take a peek? A couple that are... Yes, it is. It's also illegal in Australia. But I'll get to that in a minute. That's where we're going to get a little bit philosophical for a second, because I have to be very, very careful about what it is I say. So we found those credentials. We, of course, logged in, because if our victim's data is on that server, we have a duty to inform legal and insurance. On that server, we found a second set of credentials to a second SFTP server. And this is me doing I need to be careful what I say here. We, of course, took action in line with legal guidance to support the customer. Credentials were handed over to law enforcement and we cooperated fully. And that's what we found on the 8-base SFTP server. Some people might be like, should you really be showing that? But all of these are a couple of years old now. Sorry, that side. The TV says that side, the screen's actually that side. If anyone wants to put this to music and stick it on YouTube. But yeah, were a number of organizations. The one that is grayed out is our customer. But yeah, a lot of this is at least a year old. All of these have been posted since. We did gain access to Dragonforce's mega account fairly recently, which would have been incredibly topical for today, given what's going on in the retail industry. But there were actually a significant amount of organizations in there that hadn't been posted. And so the common sense side of me went, maybe you shouldn't do that. But yeah, it happens. It happens. It happens more often than you'd think. And usually we'll maybe take a peek to ascertain what it is that's there, and then we hand it over to legal and authorities. I've often thought it would be really funny to drop like an Akira payload on an 8-base SFTP server, because I think that would be entertaining. But as someone pointed out, that is actually illegal here in the UK. Same as in Australia, we do not have hackback laws. Whether or not it would be in the public interest to prosecute someone for essentially, putting a roadblock in a ransomware group's path is debatable. I don't think it would be in the public interest, but at the same point, I'm not willing to be the case study that finds out. But you never know. You never know. If 8-base a year from now is like, oh my God, we've been encrypted by Akira, we're going to war. Not me. Not me. Just be clear. That's okay. I'm still fiddling around with this bloody clicker. So let's talk a little bit about encryption. Yes, okay, cool. I might actually have time to have questions today. This is amazing. So they got your data out, and now they detonate ransomware. Threat actors will encrypt just about anything. They'll encrypt virtual hard drives, they will encrypt your disks, they will encrypt your documents, they will encrypt your files. The only thing that they don't really encrypt are critical files to the operating of the Windows operating system. They want you to know that they've done this. They want you to find the encrypted files. They want you to find the ransom note. Some ransomware strains encrypt entire documents, which is really awkward when you've got 120 gig virtual hard disk, because a lot of decryptors provided by threat actors will not decrypt a file that size. Other ransomware strains will only encrypt maybe the first and last couple of bytes of a file, just enough to make it unusable. And usually the actual encryption itself is most commonly identified when someone goes to work the next day. A lot of the ransomware that we see, because of course Australia is essentially time zones. Good Lord, I struggle with time zones. 11 hours ahead, fantastic. Honestly, it really, really bakes my noodle sometimes, because when we're in UTC, they're 12 hours ahead, but they change their clocks about 4 weeks before we do. So they go down to 11, then our clocks change and we go back up to 12. And of course, there are places in Australia that don't change clocks. It's working for like an Australian company is actually really difficult. I'm so alone sometimes. And there are the arrows that, you know what, see next time I'm just not going to bother with the arrows, or I'm going to bring my own laptop. So the ransom note. Ransom notes come in all shapes and sizes. Some threat actors like the Lorenz Group and Dragonforce, again, oddly topical, was not intentional. But when I realized what was going on, I was like, yes, I'm having that. Like a little bit of bluster. Lockbit, when they were still a thing, they may still be a thing, they just refused to die, were very straight to the point. We have your data, go here, talk to us. But interesting, Lockbit 3.0 offered to change the background of your page on their leak site for half a Bitcoin. It's one of these, it's an interesting quirk. The one thing I'd really rather they did is offered premium download services. Trying to download data over the Tor network is a nightmare. Tor network is so slow. See if they offered, we'll stick it in an S3 bucket for half a Bitcoin. Mate, you've got it. We're on it. And threat actors are people too. Quite like the Dragonforce ransom note. Not only did they leave the ransom note, they also email people. And it always starts off with, "This is Dragonforce." You're like, all right, bit of an ego on you, pal. Cool. That's what I wanted to appear with the threat actors are people too. Threat actors are people too. This is actually from Kirk Ransomware from way back in 2017. If you got hit with it, you were met with ASCII art of Kirk and Spock. And the ransom note was very Star Trek themed. Love Star Trek. It is, yes. Discovery, it was a bit dark. Anyway, right, otherwise we will run out of time. But yeah, threat actors are people too. Threat actors have interests, they have hobbies. Interests and hobbies also just tend to be encrypting people, but you know, I'm sure they have other interests and hobbies too. So how would anybody encrypt an entire network without being seen?
Oh, sorry. Just a quick anecdote. Russian hacking group Sandworm got their name from the Doom books, I believe, right?
Yes, I believe that is the case. I love stuff like that. I'm such a nerd. I'm fairly sure that there are other names that you could call me, but let's just stick with nerds. And when you tell your friends and family about this later, I prefer the terms quirky and eccentric to weirds. It makes it seem more interesting. Yes?
I would say, like, to answer your question there, maybe do it slowly and with like the focus on the operating system.
Slowly? Maybe. Just because bear in mind you're up against like AV, EDR technologies. So if you do it slowly, there is a chance that the EDR might pick up like a unique hash variant for your ransomware that can then just be easily dropped into a block list. But still potentially viable.
Issues where making sure you don't encrypt files or services you need to use to access the other things on the network?
Yeah, entirely possible. Sorry, there is no right answer to that question. I'm just getting up ideas. James?
Fast encryption.
Fast encryption, yeah.
Least used files first.
Least used files first. Interesting. The one that I was thinking about is actually from the Cactus group. So the Cactus group reboot devices into safe mode and then encrypt them whilst they're in safe mode. Safe mode is, I'm fairly sure we're probably all familiar with what safe mode is, but just to be certain that we're all on the same level, safe mode is a diagnostic tool inside Windows. It essentially boots to the Windows desktop with the absolute minimum number of drivers, systems, and services enabled. Basically just the core minimum required to run Windows, which means that you don't have any antivirus drivers, you don't have any EDR drivers, you don't have any anti-malware service interface drivers. So it is a fantastic place to detonate ransomware.
It's going to be noticed.
It is when they come back. It is when they come back. But that's it. When they're in safe modes, there's no EDR, there's no antivirus, so you know nobody knows what's going on. And that is actually the script that came from the Cactus engagement. I think they did the bottom 2 lines first and then to the top. So they create a user account called admin12. They add them to the local administrator account. From there, they make some changes to the registry, so that if a device is rebooted into safe mode, it reboots into like default safe mode and not safe mode with networking. It then tweaks the registry, so when anyone's logged on to like a corporate system, you go to log on, it comes up with that spiel that's like, oh, your activity is being monitored, don't do anything stupid before you put your username in. They tweak the registry to stop that from popping up if it's there. And then they, excuse me, change more registry keys so that the admin12 user automatically logs on as an admin and then executes a script called 2.bat, which extracts the ransomware payload from an archive, detonates it, and then reboots you to normal operation again. And all of a sudden, you have an entire fleet of devices that went into safe mode for nobody's really entirely sure why, come back, and they are all encrypted. Group policy, enforced by popular demand. And it's not something that we regularly see, but we saw it fairly recently. Group policy can be weaponized by threat actors. One domain controller can be the downfall of your entire domain. Ransomware was deployed by group policy objects via admin shares, and it followed up with a group policy object to create a scheduled task to detonate it. In this instance, the threat actor also used this as a way to maintain persistence by dropping their RMM tool on endpoints, and they also used it to exfiltrate data. The thing with group policy is that if it is detected as malicious by your antivirus or your EDR, they can kill it. But next time that PC dials out to your domain controller for a group policy update, it can just come straight back. Yeah. I don't know why I'm standing to look at it this way. I can see it behind me. But actually, this was a kind of interesting one. The customer was using Symantec as their antivirus EDR provider of all things. Symantec, on the devices it was installed on, actually did a fantastic job at catching and killing it. Unlike Sophos or Trend Micro. We come across things like Trend Micro fairly regularly. Worry-free business. It's worry-free because it doesn't detect anything, and you can't have security incidents if you don't detect anything. I get a lot of like Sophos ads on like YouTube. Watch a lot of YouTube. Get Sophos ads, and it's like, yeah, our next gen EDR is fantastic, and I was like, no, it's not. Cool. So this, I actually have some sound clips, so I really hope that this works. So there are various types of extortion techniques performed by threat actors. You have single extortion, where they will either exfiltrate or encrypt your data and then try and solicit a ransom payment. You have double extortion, where they will exfiltrate and encrypt your data and try and solicit a payment to destroy and unencrypt. Triple extortion is when they do exfiltration, encryption, and then they follow up by really applying the pressure. They contact employees of the victim organization who might not know what's going on. They're already in a bit of a panic. They're known to email customers. I mean, could you imagine like the customers of M&S right now getting an email from the threat actor being like, look at all this stuff that we've done. They'd go nuts, and rightly so. Recently, the past years, threat actors have been calling people, which is kind of interesting. And I've literally just talked through the entire slide here, so, you know, click, click, click. Basically, what the threat actors are trying to do, they are trying to put the victim organization under as much pressure as is humanly possible to try and extract money from them. Some people have a bit of a sense of humor. So the email is from the Lorenz group. In addition to encrypting and exfiltrating, they also compromised a mailbox. And when they compromised that mailbox, they sent a mail to everybody and invented a new user called Laurie Enzo, their encrypt manager. It's the small things that make us giggle. And I will see if I can't get these to work. I did ask if there was sound here. Go on, touching things, I don't like it. Oh, that didn't like that. Cool, right, I will continue onwards, and if I figure out how that works, we'll do it towards the end. I'll have a fiddle towards the end. Maybe you need to take it out of presenter mode and have a click about. But either way, that was the first one is a phone call from the Cactus group. Basically, you know, we've got your data, you were in negotiating, you're not anymore, you really should, otherwise you're going to be in big trouble. And again, really topically, the one on this side is from Dragon Force. They call and they leave voicemails to encourage people to pay the ransom. So we have, yes, great time. Let's talk a little bit about ransomware negotiations. Quick show of hands, who agrees with that statement that you should never pay the ransom?
Depends.
That's okay, there's a few of you. Anyone that had their hands up for you should never pay the ransom, ever? Fewer people that time. Oh, a lot of the organizations that we deal with are small to medium businesses. Oops, sorry, stop playing with the bloody buttons. Are small to medium businesses. They either don't have dedicated IT staff or they outsource it to a managed IT service provider. They are users of technology. They are not experts in technology. Technology should be used to complement their work and make their life easier. A lot of these, or like a lot of the people that work for these organizations have no knowledge of this kind of thing. You know, it's not their fault. Like, it wasn't them that left their, you know, terminal services gateway facing the internet with no MFA. It wasn't their fault that this has happened. Like, I know a lot of folk in here are students, but I'd imagine like a lot of you have worked or do work or will work. Like, how would you guys feel if the organisation that you worked for just suddenly just gone? Like, how do you keep a roof over your head? How do you keep food on the table? How do you keep the power on? If you've got dependents, how do you make sure that they're okay? Like, don't get me wrong, like, you shouldn't pay the ransom, but it is an option of very, very last resort. And interestingly, if you do have to pay the ransom, it's covered by insurance. So yeah, negotiations are only ever authorised as the option of very, very last resort, as in there is absolutely no way to get that data back, and without that data, that organisation ceases to exist. Negotiations are carried out by specialist third-party organisations. They're almost always paid in cryptocurrency. It's actually surprisingly difficult to get like $150,000 worth of Bitcoin in one go, whereas these third-party organisations tend to keep a stockpile for this kind of purpose. No negotiations are carried out with groups on international sanctions lists. That's basically when the government are like, oh, you shouldn't pay the ransom, but absolutely do not pay them a ransom, different levels. Payments often result in the decryptor for files, data destruction for anything that they've exfiltrated. Some groups have even sent us like videos of them RFing devices to be like, oh, we've deleted your data. And I'm like, have you really? Anyway, discussion for another time. And some even offer pen test reports, interestingly. And are the third-party negotiation teams that we work with most oftenly, Coveware and Cypher. They will engage with the threat actor on behalf of the customer. So what does like actual negotiation look like? I don't have any screenshots of chat rooms, but these are from chat logs provided by either Coveware or Cypher. Some of these threat actor groups are like really well organized. We've got these are both from Akira. Akira offer different package levels, just like an enterprise organization. If you want everything, which is the data destruction, decryptors, pen test reports, all the bits and pieces, it's $900,000. But they offer different packages at different costs depending on how much you can afford to pay. Akira also look through the data that they have stolen. In this case, in the data that they stole, they knew that the victim had cyber insurance. And what did that last one say? And yeah, there you go. The whole package, $900,000, and this is 900,000 US. So that would be about 1.4 million Australian. Yeah, the text in red is from them. The text in black is from the negotiator. This goes on for about 6 pages, but don't worry, I don't have all 6 with us. I'll pause for a second because I can still see some folk are still reading. Absolutely insane. But yeah, a lot of these like threat actor groups are set up to be relatively professional and follow sort of like business operations. All quite happy that you've all read? Yeah, not seeing any shaky heads. Superb. So yeah, threat actors are. I'm not going to swear. I'm not going to swear because it's being recorded and it's going to be on the internet, and my soon-to-be wife is going to see this, and my employer, of course. Hey Rich, I'm on the TV. So it's not all doom and gloom when it comes to ransomware and negotiating with threat actors. We had an incident, actually I'll look at the date because it's there. Yeah, there you go, October 2023. Threat actors had broken into an organization. It was a small chain, like they had a couple of hotels, a couple of restaurants, not like, massive amounts of money. But basically, they got in the encryption, and the guy jumped onto their chat room and was basically like, my wife is dying of stage 4 cancer. I don't have any money to give you. And over the course of, I think it was about 2 weeks worth of negotiating, the threat actor basically came back and said, right, if you can prove it, we'll give you the decryptor for free. And they did. They actually... as you can see from the bottom side of that screenshot there, they even offered to RDP back into the environment and do it themselves. Spoiler alert, the decryptor didn't work. But yeah, so some threat actors do have a surprising amount of empathy. A lot of some threat actors will be very anti-healthcare. They don't want people losing their lives, so they'll steal your data, but they won't encrypt it. They still want to pay out. But yeah, so occasionally you come across threat actors that have a surprising amount of empathy. Not gonna lie, I kind of wonder what it would be like to be the doctor that got the phone call from the burly Russian. It's like, is this a? I'm not even gonna. I'm tempted. I was gonna try the accent. It would be horrendously offensive, so I'm not gonna bother. HR training is finally working. But yeah, like, could you imagine being that doctor that gets that phone call from that like Russian out of the blue that's like, "Yo, is so and so a patient of yours?" Yes. Stage 4 cancer? Yes. What? Cool. Right. Stop pinging me, Jesus Christ. We've got 10 minutes to go. This has never happened to me in my life.
Can I do the mics for speakers, like forward questions?
Yeah, of course. I'll actually be able to answer the questions if anyone has any. Questions, anybody?
Did anyone actually take them up on the how the Bitcoin change the background?
I have no idea. I don't spend that much time on the Lockbit leak site. Do you have a question?
Yes. So I have a question about attribution. I don't know if you mentioned it. Like, what is the best way to figure out, like, who's the attacker? Like, of course we know the group, but is there, I don't know, Koreans or Russians?
We don't really. We don't really. The problem that we have today, and actually anyone that was at security and potentially at James's talk just there, James goes through this in quite a bit of detail about why attribution is a bit dead. What we have seen in the past is we use a tool called Iris that collates all of our IOCs. We have seen in the past that we've got the same host name, same address, same IP address, same region doing multiple different attacks, which is kind of interesting. Couldn't tell you who it is, but we can tell you that it's possibly the same person. And in today's threat landscape, where a lot of ransomware threat groups operate as ransom as a service, they rely on affiliates, initial access brokers, who are relatively nameless, relatively faceless. It's very difficult to attribute and tell you who they are. Awesome. Yes?
Have you
I see you.
Oh, me, yeah.
Yeah, you go.
Have you ever come across an incident where you were actually able to recover the key due to bad security on the threat actor side and decrypt it yourself without having to pay a ransom?
Yes. But not quite how you describe it. Someone, it might be Kaspersky, of all people, Russian AV vendor, maintains a list of like decryptors to various ransomware strains. We've used one of them once or twice. We talked I briefly mentioned like Coldware and Cypher. They also maintain something they call UniDecrypt, which has various keys for various strains loaded into it. If it's a strain that they have a UniDecrypt for, they will ask us to get some test files, check it first. And it's not the first time that we've been able to use them to decrypt files without. Doesn't happen very often, but when it does happen, I'm like, yes, fuck you. Up the back.
Two questions. Also, thanks for your chat, and pretty cool. So you say that, like, for instance, should we pay the ransomware, right? But what happens in situations like what we had with WannaCry, for instance, where that malware was released, like, unfinished, and the data that was exfiltrated wasn't decryptable anyway, so even, you had a couple of organizations that paid it, but as a whole, the ransomware wasn't paid. What happens in that situation? If you pay ransomware and you still don't get your data back?
So I think WannaCry is a good example because I personally don't think that WannaCry was like ransomware in the sense that ransomware today. I think it was more destructive than anything else. A lot of these threat groups trade on reputation. If it becomes public knowledge that your decryptor doesn't work, you're not going to get paid. If it becomes public knowledge that you've not deleted the data you said you did and leaked it anyway, you're not going to get paid. And that's, don't get me wrong, that's usually a decision that is made by insurers and lawyers and not the victim themselves, assuming they've got cyber insurance and that kind of thing. But basically, yeah, these threat groups trade on reputation. And if they don't do what they say they do, or the stuff that they, like the decryptors and things don't work, people will very quickly stop.
stance on that, but it's like, well, okay, kind of grey areas there because we're saving lives, right? What would you take?
I don't disagree that when we come across like that, we definitely have a moral and ethical duty to do something about it. However, and don't get me wrong, we do have a duty to do something about it. We collaborate extensive with Australian law enforcement. We know that Australian law enforcement then reach out to these organisations and say, hey, by the way, are you aware that your data's on this server? Because we've had a number of engagements that have been kicked off, like the Dutch police have contacted a couple of customers who have then, they've done the same thing. As to like deleting the data or taking or destroying the server, personally, I think we should.
Yeah. So the real problem is with the law surrounding that rather than the actions that we could possibly take.
Yes, yeah, that's it. Like the law is the law. There is very little wiggle room. It goes back to that point. It's like, do I think that there would be prosecutions come about, one, because of the crime, but two, because there is a public interest in pursuing the case. Do I think that there is a public interest in going after people that do that to threat act or infrastructure? No, I don't, personally. You're right, because when it comes to like the healthcare and things, it is lives. We've had a couple over the past number of years where, don't want to go into too many details because it did hit headlines and things, where there have quite literally been lives at risk. But at the same point, I don't want to be the person, if I was to be convicted of a computer crime, that's my career over.
Yeah.
And I know that's a really selfish thing to say, my career over other people's safety, but like we have to work within the channels that we have.
The long term good you can do versus like getting put in jail, right?
That's it. If I get prosecuted and put in jail, I can't help anyone anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a very, very tricky grey area. Harry?
Just as a small counterpoint, so in that scenario, you've seen all these directories with names not validated. If that data is indeed related to those names, imagine that all of those victims are real victims and their decryption keys are stored in the root of that directory. You wipe it, you're doing the right moral thing on one hand, all those organizations are currently negotiating to get access to their data back. The problem is, if you don't operate within the legal framework, liability for that action now is on you individually and as an organization. So that's the problem of taking essentially vigilante action outside of the law, is while it might feel like the right thing to do, you're not structured within any kind of framework that gives you any form of protection if you happen to have made the wrong call.
There we go. Harry has put that so much more eloquently than I could. I'm basically just like, kill them all! And yeah. So for me personally, like I would go and have a nosy through and see what I could pull down. That's how we found the second 8-base SFTP server from the first one, is because we found the credentials sitting in a directory somewhere. But I can't make that guarantee for everyone else. And as much as I joked about how it'd be funny to drop like an Akira payload on an 8-base server, again, as fun and as entertaining as that would be, and I still would like to do it one day, just for shits and giggles, but not everyone will make that same assessment. Not everyone will be as careful. And even though I say that I would look and I would try to be careful, there is absolutely still no guarantee that I wouldn't destroy something. So yeah, as Harry put it, that's kind of the...
I could also say that it's part of you work for your business. You're the front of that business. So as much as independently you would love to do something to get your credentials back, we're not the judge and the jury.
Yeah.
It reflects badly on the business if you do something criminal.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. Sorry, we've got time for maybe one or two others. So many options. I think you had your hand up first.
Is there a predominant region where threat actors store their services, or the servers used to make use of the laws that apply in there?
We see a fair few SFTP servers hosted in the Netherlands. I'm not entirely sure why that might be. I think they have like bulletproof hosting providers there. Couldn't tell you. I just know that seems to be quite a popular place to exfiltrate data from. Occasionally we see New Zealand, Mega being predominantly an ANZ company. Yeah, tends to be like the Netherlands, Eastern Europe, New Zealand. James.
So if you know more ransomware.org, they have the decryption keys. Have you used that in your engagement?
Maybe. I say maybe because I know that we've used decryption keys from one of the antivirus providers. That may or may not be the same thing. We've used it from Coveware and Cypher before. I'm not sure about ransomware.org.
One more, if I may. So in terms of mitigation, Google are talking about like passwordless access and pass keys. Do you see that as being passwordless access being a mitigation for these attacks?
Do I see it being a mitigation? Yes. Do I see it being widely adopted by people who view technology, who view passwords as a barrier? Not really. I would love for that to be the case. I really, really would. Which is why I will never run for politics, because I'm like, everyone gets MFA. That's it, the law. I'd love for that to be a case. I think that could be a really, really strong mitigating factor. But like we have a hard enough time getting people to have complex passwords as it is. I think introducing more barriers is people. If it gets in the way, people are going to try and find a way around it. Not out of maliciousness, but they just want to do their job. Yes, last one.
As someone who's had to help people recover from ransomware attacks, what would you say is the best possible steps that you should advise them to do after either they paid the ransom or they've managed to restore their services that they should take to ensure it doesn't happen again?
That is a good question. As part of our engagements, we always produce a full technical report, and we also produce a full list of recommendations. Recommendations will close the security gaps that were exploited by the threat actor, but also view the organisation slightly wider to just increase their overall security posture and hopefully deploy or hopefully implement like a defence in depth layered security approach, so that if one control fails, there will be a compensating control somewhere that will hopefully pick up the slack. In terms of general recommendations, because every situation is different. In terms of like general recommendations, I think organisations really need to look at what they are exposing publicly, because it can be very easily found via like search engines like Shodan. Basic security principles. If you've got FortiGate that's publicly facing, patch it. Patch it. If it's end of life, swap it out for something else. Don't let servers access the internet aside from vendor-specific websites. Will stop people exfiltrating data from your file server.
Get rid of Windows 7.
Get rid of Windows 7.
You say that, but the company I worked for, they got rid of Windows 7, and then they bought another company, and their entire server got ransomware. Well, server environment got ransomware. Doing exactly the purchase.
Well, that's it. So there's that's it. There are still systems in the NHS that use Windows XP, and it's not for budget. It's not for like budgetary reasons. It's not because they don't want to upgrade. It's because like the software that the MRI machine runs on can only run on that version of Windows XP. If you switched it out for something more modern, that's your £5 million MRI machine useless. Sometimes it is just technical debt, technical legacy. Sometimes you actually can't move away from that kind of technology. Anyway, right, it is lunchtime. I will not get between you guys and food. Thank you very much. All right, have a wonderful day, everyone.